To hang or not to hang, that is the conversation tonight that we're having on Checkpoint, and we will be focusing on that bill, two draft bills that are in Parliament right now, on whether indeed we should revive, so to speak, the death penalty and put those who are convicted of the crimes that attract the death penalty to death. One member of Parliament says, let's do away with it altogether. Another says, the punishment fits the crime. So we're asking you today whether you, of course, think that we should continue with the death penalty. Should we start again? The last time this was done was in 1987. Hezekiah Ochuka, good evening. Welcome to the Bulletin tonight. My name is Yvonne Okwara Matole. And
my name is John Allen Namu. Of course, 1987 being a very inauspicious occasion for those people who are activists against the death penalty. But of course, the prevailing circumstances in Kenya today have revived it somewhat with respect to what's happening in terrorism and the kind of crimes that we're faced with as a country. But the death penalty has been handed down to quite a number of people. The death sentence, rather, and I think you have that on you.
Indeed. These are just some of the statistics we'll be taking a look at as we have our discussion. There's that report. I tweeted this a little earlier, and it's causing a bit of heat and storm, and Kenyans cannot believe this. The 2014 Economic Survey then said that 32% of the death sentences handed worldwide are done by Kenyan courts. Now, this is because Kenya is yet to completely abolish the death sentence. And for those crimes that do attract the death sentence, we continue to sentence people to death, even though we don't put them to death. So these are some of the numbers that you want to take a look at. Sentences that have been handed down per year in this country. Statistics are a little hard to come by, so you'll bear with us. The government doesn't freely share these numbers. So these are statistics we got from Amnesty International. In the year 2010, 5 people were sentenced to death. The number continues to increase year on year. 2011 went up by 6 to 11 people. And that number almost doubled in 2012 to 21 people sentenced to death. And there is a case at the Supreme Court challenging this whole issue. And like you said, John, we're grappling with big issues right now in the country, and to see whether this is that silver bullet that helps to bring down the numbers of crime. Of course, we'll have some more statistics from, I don't know if we call it best practice, countries that have that, or worst practice, depending on how you look at it. So the hashtag tonight is Checkpoint. Do let us know your thoughts. 22155 as well on SMS.
Of course, we do have other stories that we have lined up this evening, including one coming out of Kibera. Very interesting, very controversial story there. We'll get to that in a moment. Here now are the highlights on KTN Weekend Prime, the points of news. Plans for controversial motion against alleged forced prayers in schools.
And to hang or not to hang, the death penalty debate is revived.
Mtu anauliza mimi nimepata pesa wapi? Nimekuwa Managing Director of SmithKline Beecher, looking after 47 African countries with head office in Lagos and Nairobi.
Mumias did not just die. I want you, Mr. President, as you consider bringing more money, you pursue the criminals who stole from Mumias, the prefect. Wow!
Plus, Kidero defends his record as Mumia's sugar politics rage on.
Uhuru na Agwambo tunawamalizia 2017. Kama namna gani? Ndio watashindana 2017. Alafu mimi nitarudi 2022 sasa kuomba ile deni yangu ile.
And Deputy President William Ruto sets his eyes on election 2022. Thank you for making the time to join us tonight. Our sign language interpreter is William Silla. These are the top stories we've prepared for you tonight. Muslim leaders have condemned a school in Taita Taveta County said to force Muslim students to attend church services.
They say that this infringes on their constitutional rights and freedom of worship.
And as KTN's Sharon Mamanyi now reports, this is not the first time such a case has occurred in the country.
As the Muslim community continues observing the holy month of Ramadan, a matter touching on the faith is brewing at a school in Taita Taveta County. It is alleged that Muslim students at the Bura Girls High School are forced to attend church services, something that their parents are protesting.
Wazazi na wanafunzi wote wamekuja kwa ofisi yangu, wanaelezea vile haki zao zinadhulumiwa, kulazimishwa mtoto wa kike wa Kiislamu lazima aingie katika kanisa.
Pale Sheikh Khalifa hakuna mwanafunzi Mkristo analazimishwa kuingia hiyo msikiti. So we are going to tell Professor Kaimenyi, we will write to him, we will call him on Monday. Na huyo mwalimu ndio anaharibu Kenya ambayo tunaijenga, ambayo ni Kenya ambayo Waislamu wa Kristo na madini na makabila zote tunataka waungane.
It is alleged that 40 Muslim students were suspended on Monday after refusing to attend a church service last Sunday. This is not the first time a religious controversy has occurred in schools. In 2014, the High Court stopped Muslim students at St. Paul Kiwanjani School in Isiolo County from wearing hijabs and trousers. The court ruled that the move to allow a section of students to attend the school in their religious attire was unlawful and against the school's regulations.
Because the petition, I will officially be presenting it in Parliament next week, so that Parliament can be able to endorse and ensure that there is no religious hatred and division that will continue in this country.
In 2012, the High Court also ruled against a quest to have 48 Muslim girls attending the Kenya High School in Nairobi to wear hijab while in school. The court ruled that that would amount to discrimination of the other students who would be required to continue wearing their prescribed school uniform.
Mandugu zetu wa Kristo hii nchi wamesimama na sisi. Na lazima sisi pia Waislamu tusimame, tuwe na subra, tuwe na tolerance.
The question begs, should schools allow Muslim girls to wear hijabs at the institutions? And should they force the students to attend Christian prayers? Sharma Manyi, KTN.
All right, so this is our big discussion tonight. We're focusing on the death penalty in Kenya. Like we said at the start of this program, it is hard to come by statistics on the death penalty in Kenya. So some of the statistics I'm going to present to you in a short while have been gleaned from various civil society organizations. But first, let's understand the anchorage of this in law. So this is what the Penal Code says, that any person who is found to have taken the life of another by unlawful act or omission is guilty of murder. And it goes on to say that any person who's convicted of that crime shall be sentenced to death. That is what the Penal Code says. Now, the Constitution says something maybe similar. Let's take a look at that. It says every person has the right to life, except to the extent authorized by this Constitution or any other written law. Now, it's important to note that juveniles and women who are pregnant are exempt from the death penalty. So as long as the crime was committed while they were underage, or even a woman who's with child at the time of the trial will not be sentenced to death. So let's get into some of those crimes that attract the death penalty there. We've just talked about the Penal Code and talking about murder. So here they are. We have murder, we have robbery with violence, we have treason. Before we move to the next one, this is causing a bit of controversy. Treason, remember, is a political offense. So some are starting to question whether this should be on the list in the first place. Now, let me explain something about robbery with violence. If you live in this country, you either have experienced this or know somebody who has. It could be carjacking, a gun put to your head or a knife put to your throat. But the interpretation of this could be very simple. It could be the young man in the village who steals a chicken with a stick in his hand. That could be considered robbery with violence or armed robbery. So these are just some of the ones. But there's also something else that has added onto this list of those who, the crimes that attract the death penalty. The Kenya Defence Forces Act 2012 came into being, and it put some of these crimes under the death penalty. That's treachery, spying, and aiding the enemy. Now, what happens to those who are sentenced to death in this country? They're held in the 7 maximum security prisons in the country. That's Kamiti, Naivasha, Kibos, Kingongo, Manyani, Kodiaga, and Shimo Latewa. And we will get to the conditions under which they're held as they're waiting to die in just a moment. So, just how many people are on death row in this country at the moment? Now, before we get to that, though, let's talk about this one here. The government commuted the death sentences of 4,000 prisoners who were on death row to life. That happened in 2009 by President Mwai Kibaki at the time, and he actually opened up the space for national dialogue on this issue. He wanted a national debate on whether we should continue to sentence people to death but not actually execute them. So these are some of the numbers we have here, and we've gotten these figures from the UN Human Rights Committee. In 2012, 1,582 people faced the death penalty in this country, and these numbers here, before we move forward very quickly, these sentences were actually handed down in a period of just 3.5 years between this time, when President Kibaki commuted those sentences to life, and 2012. So in 3.5 years, we sentenced 1,582 people to death in this country. Let's take a look at some of the other statistics. I just want to give you a variation of what exists out there. In 2013, according to this organization, that's the Penal Reform International and Foundation for Human Rights Institute, 2,000 people were on death row, a bit of a different figure from the UN there. Now, it's important to note that Kenya abstained from 4 votes at the United Nations General Assembly on a moratorium on capital punishment. Many have complained that there is no political will to abolish the death penalty and that it leaves those who've been sentenced to death in legal limbo. Death row syndrome is something that has been alluded to here. So what happens to the people who are on death row? You do not work in prison, you do not engage in any activity simply because you are waiting to die. So, let's continue to look at some figures. The number of death sentences handed down per year. Like I said, we quoted some statistics there that were shocking. So let's break them down by numbers. This again from Amnesty International. In the year 2010, 5 people sentenced to death. The number continues to increase to 11 in 2011 and 21 in 2012. That economic survey report saying 32% of all death sentences worldwide are handed down by courts in this country alone. So what has been happening with this discussion? There have been some court petitions, and I'd like to take you through some of them now. Now in 2010, Mutiso versus the Republic, he was sentenced to death, and he went to court and he actually quoted the death row syndrome and he wanted an appeal of it. So he was against the arbitrariness and inhumane treatment. So basically what happens is when you have committed or accused of committing those crimes that attract the death penalty, there is no mitigation. The automatic sentence is death. And that is what he was against. He talked about it violating the constitutional protections. He also quoted the death row syndrome that we're talking about there. Now, what happened was he was able to win that case, and they said, okay, all right, this makes some sense. But then, 2013, 3 years later, Joseph Mara went to court actually quoting that previous ruling in 2010. But in this case, his death penalty was upheld. Now, the court reasoned that whether or not that mandatory death penalty is constitutional should be decided by Parliament. They said the death sentence is not cruel, inhumane, or degrading as it is not applied sadistically. Now, all of these then culminated in another case that is before the Supreme Court at this moment. But let me just give you some studies from a country which is well known for having the death penalty, some states at least. There was a study conducted by professors at Emory University. They did 12 academic studies between the years of 2001 and 2007. Now, some of the correlations here might be a little off the mark. I don't know. You be the judge. Now, 9 out of those 12 studies concluded that the death penalty saves lives. Why? Let's break it down a little bit for you now. Apparently, according to those studies there that were conducted by those professors, 1 execution deters an average of 18 murders in the countries, in the states that actually practice the death penalty in the United States. This is another one. So for every 2.75 years that were cut from an inmate's stay on death row, at least 1 murder was prevented. Now they're trying to make this correlation between putting people to death and a lowering of the crime rates in that country at the time. Here's something else I want you to ponder on, some food for thought, even as we consider this case in Kenya. John Holt is the author of Freedomnomics. Now, he was able to track the death penalty in the United States between 1991 and the year 2000. This is what he found, and this is controversial at best. He said that there were 9,114 fewer murders per year during this period, and during the same period, number of executions increased by 71 per year. So what he was basically saying, more execution, fewer murders. Execution being a deterrent factor there. Now, this would be difficult to know in Kenya because we haven't executed anyone since 1987 when Hezekiah Ochuka, the mastermind of the 1982 coup, was put to death. So where does that leave us now? Is this something that would be that silver bullet, like we say, serial killers, terrorism in the country? Interesting conversation. Definitely an interesting conversation. Just something to note from the United States is how well they've been able to track and correlate the number of death sentences that have been handed down and the number of murders that have reduced. I don't know whether that's something that we can do in Kenya, considering that these statistics are not open source per se. Right. Yes. Right. Absolutely. And that's definitely something that should inform this kind of a discussion. So we're not just speaking in terms of our own convictions. Right. So the guests tonight, very quickly, we have Honorable Irungu Kangata, Honorable John Waiganjo, and Country Director, Amnesty International, Justice Nyang'ai. They'll all be joining in the conversation. You can as well. 22155 is the SMS number. Is the death penalty the silver bullet? Should we start executing people today? Interesting one. And one of the charges that people have been talking about with respect to the death penalty is corruption. And that leads us very nicely to segue into our next story, which is about corruption and people's claims against it. Let's meet in court. That's what Nairobi Governor Evans Kidero's response has been to those accusing him of contributing to the downfall of the Mumias Sugar Company. Kidero cites his track record, which he says is proof enough that he can never be associated with the failures at Mumias Sugar. Let's join KTN's Ian Wafula with those details.
Hapa Mumias did not just die. I want you, Mr. President, as you consider bringing more money, you pursue the criminals who stole from Mumias na prefect wao. Mheshimiwa prefect ya hawa criminals is the governor of Nairobi.
Claims that Nairobi Governor Dr. Evans Kidero termed as malicious and part of a scheme to tarnish his name. And now, days later, he came out confident that it was only the law that could prove these claims wrong.
Lakini, inaweza kuwa mtu anajua vile ilikuwako, kesi ziko kotini ya wale ambayo wamechukua pesa Mumias is in court. Jina langu haliko hapo.
Speaking during a church service at Getsemani Ministry in Embakasi constituency, Kidero said that his track record spoke for itself and that he has never been associated with failure. He says the Mumias Sugar Company thrived during his tenure and should not be linked to the collapse of the company, now in debt of up to 6 billion shillings.
We demand as the people of Kakamega that the billions that Kidero looted from this factory must be brought back. We give it to the people of Kakamega.
Mimi maisha yangu yote nimefanya kazi kwa nguvu. Nimekuwa director at the age of 29. Mtu anauliza mimi nimepata pesa wapi? Nimekuwa managing director of SmithKline Beecham, looking after 47 African countries with head office in Lagos na Nairobi. Kwani nilikuwa nalipwa na ndizi?
Kidero, who was at the helm of the sugar company for 9 years, claimed that the bailing out of the company by the government in itself was not enough to return the company to its former glory. He says the answer lies in addressing issues such as sugar importation and quote-unquote sugarcane poaching.
Then from 2003 to 2012.
But as Kidero took to the pulpit to defend himself, an even larger group was backing him. They called themselves the Luya leaders from Western Kenya in Nairobi, and theirs was to term the claims against Kidero as political.
We cannot all be blaming someone, yet we as leaders know the truth. Success is success and cannot be hidden, as our leaders now purport.
Despite the 1 billion shilling bailout and the 2 billion shilling approved by the National Assembly for rights issue, Mumias Sugar Company remains in debt of 5 billion shillings. And on the sidelines, farmers continue to cry foul, most of whom it is reported have opted to go into maize farming instead. Ian Wafula, KTN.
All right, in an interesting turn of events today, Deputy President William Ruto is now seemingly reaching out to court leader Raila Odinga. Ruto is asking Raila to support his presidential ambitions in 2022. The Deputy President was speaking in Bondo during a fundraiser.
Mimi nilishindana na Kalonzo. Kalonzo nikamshinda. Naye kwamba akashinda na Uhuru. Sasa kisirani ni ya nini? Ama namna gani? Uko pamoja? Kwa sababu unajua saa zingine baba anakasirika na mimi. Anajaribu kunilaumu, lakini mimi sikushindana na yeye. Alishindana na Uhuru. Ama namna gani? Tuko pamoja? Na mimi naamini ya kwamba hakuna uadui kwa siasa. Si namna hiyo? Na unajua Uhuru na Agwambo tunawamalizia 2017. Ama namna gani? Ndio watashindana 2017. Alafu mimi nitarudi 2022 sasa kuomba ile deni yangu ile ama namna gani? Si mtu anarejesha mkono jameni. Hiyo mimi nitakuja kudai lakini siku yake bado.
ODM Secretary General Ababu Namwamba has rubbished claims that there are moles in the ODM. Ababu says that this is a tired narrative aimed at dividing the party. KTN's Wilson Mburu has those details.
It has been a subject that has flared tempers in the Orange Party in the last few weeks after a group of MPs led by Ababu Namwamba accused Party Chief Whip Jakoyo Midiwo of being the biggest Jubilee mole. Party leader Raila Odinga just last week sought to set the record straight by declaring that there are no traitors in the party. The party's Secretary General, Ababu Namwamba, has seemingly given the subject a wide berth. Until now.
Jakoyo Midiwo has been termed a Jubilee mole.
Oh, yes.
You haven't said anything about it. Why?
Because I think this mole business is nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. It's absolute hogwash. And I've always told those who spread this so-called mole business that you need to be a little bit more imaginative. How can you run with one brand for like 2-3 years?
Claimed that Midiwo is being used by the Jubilee administration to undermine parliamentary operations by CORD and a perennial State House guest.
It bespeaks of a movement populated by people who seem to be running out of ideas.
The Budalangi Member of Parliament also denied accusations of colluding with government leveled against him after he led a delegation of Luhya leaders to State House for a meeting with the President.
What I have done is to acknowledge that government exists to serve the people. Government does not exist to serve a party. And while our government is formed by a party, it is agenda, it is nationalistic. So that, for instance, Uhuru Kenyatta is the leader of Jubilee, but he's the president of Kenya. And so, when you put him in the political prison, you see him as a rival within the Jubilee framework. But when you put him in the leadership prison, you see him as a president with a mandate to serve 40 million Kenyans.
Ababu says it is high time that leaders realize that people can work together even as rivals to serve a common goal, developing Kenya. Wilson Mburu, KTN in Budalangi, Busia County.
Baringo Senator Gideon Moi is asking the government to fast-track the issuance of title deeds to the residents of Mochongoi to enable them realize the economic value of their land. The senator says he hopes the residents who have stayed for over 12 years without title deeds will be issued with the documents before the end of the year. The KANU National Chairman was addressing the residents after attending a church service in AIC in Kimoriot. He assured the people that peace will prevail in Baringo, following resolutions made by leaders there.
Hebu tingizeni tukisalamia mheshimiwa wa seneta. Mpaka ifanyiwe development alafu watu wapate title. Mbona saa hizi hata ukipeleka hii title yako ati kwa loan hakuna uwezo peo. So tunataka kabisa hawa wapate title zao ndio wapate hata loan. Hapo mnatuambia Mchongoi is a gazetted government forest. Gazetted government forest kitu gani? Hii shule ni gazetted school. Chiefs wako hapa pia wako gazetted. Locations wako gazetted. Sasa unaandika barua ya kufanyia sisi nini? Hatuwezi kubali hiyo barua na tunaambiwa watu ya KFS tafuta kazi nyingine. TTI itashuka Mchongoi, mupende, musipende.
And part of the measures is that we have to rehabilitate the schools which were destroyed. We have to get the children back. We're going to have KPRs on both sides, which will be there to enhance the security situation. We'll have more reinforced men in uniform here, and part of our KPRs, or now they're called National Police Reserves, will be trained by the police force.
Darwin Mukitsa produced a man-of-the-match performance as Kenya cruised to a 46-15 victory over Tunisia in the Rugby Afrique Division 1A Championship match played at the RFUEA grounds in Nairobi. Now, Kenya's win leaves Tunisia staring at relegation from the top-tier league. Robinson Okenya with more details.
Kenya took on Tunisia in a thrilling encounter that brought together two wounded lions, each seeking to restore itself among the best in Africa in a battle to avoid the drop from the Division 1A. Despite Simba bowling off to a bright start, it was their North Africa opponents Tunisia who crossed the whitewash first to take a 6-0 lead through two converted penalties. Kenya was however not willing to be the whipping boys in front of their home fans, forcing Darwin Mukitsa to make the first try of the match. Moments later, Samuel H doubled Simba's advantage to make matters 14-9. Tunisia successfully converted yet another penalty that brought them within 2 points behind Simba before the breather. In the second half, Darwin Mukitsa continued with his exploits as he put Kenya 22-12 before Tunisia's Khalif Chams converted a penalty. Samuel H continued to impress, scoring his second try of the match. With Tunisia playing with a man less, Robert Aringo and Vincent Mose took advantage to score a try each to give Kenya 46-15 victory.
We knew they were going to try and slow it down because they're good at slowing down the game. Slow games, they're good. We are a fast team, we are more fit. That's why we decided second half we're not going to get into the wrangles.
Déjà, c'est une très belle that have made their flank get tired, and they also the Ramadan they are going through, and what have happened back at home, the terrorist attack affects some players. So les Kenyans, ils ont des bons joueurs.
Darwin Mukitsa picked up the man of the match trophy.
Today's win means Kenya has avoided the drop, but all eyes will be out to see how Kenya will perform against Spain next month. Robinson Okenya, KTN Sports.
Great win there by Kenya, and I hear the Malkia Stars are also doing us proud in Mexico. Congratulations to them. Now, the 3-day Sacco Games came to an end at the Railways Sports Club, with organizers elated by the competitive edge exhibited in the games. They hope the annual event that featured 4 disciplines, that's football, netball, basketball and volleyball, will be replicated across the country in the counties.
The 5th edition of the Sacco and Institutions Games came to a close at Railways Club in Nairobi on Sunday evening. The 3-day event attracted over 60 teams from financial institutions in the country. There will be a new football champion following the elimination of Police in the semi-finals. Police are using the games to sharpen their arsenal ahead of the second round of the GoTV Championships.
We take this for them so that we can gauge our player. We take it as a training session for even us who are playing, we are always regular, for improving ourselves. We can improve our skills because we meet different people, because football is a matter of playing time.
Cooperative Bank women's team lifted this year's title, and their male colleagues also walked away with the trophy. The men's volleyball crown went to Airport Sacco, while United Nations Sacco settled for second place. Favorites Police failed to live up to their top billing as they completed the podium finish. In netball, champions Ministry of Information and Technology have been unbeaten since Friday. The organizers hope such interactions through sports will help the sides in networking.
And we realize that we are aging, some of us are aging. So we want to bring our youth and motivate them into the future to take up our roles.
The annual event comprised of 4 disciplines: football, volleyball, basketball, and netball. Hassan Juma, KTN Sports.
Okay, so let's get into some more of your feedback on our discussion tonight on Checkpoint. Soccer analyst says corruption should attract the death penalty. The ripple effects of such actions lead to deaths that can never be accounted for. I have another one saying pickpockets are given the death penalty by mobs for stealing a few shillings, while those that steal millions are given a free pass. That's impunity.
And just carrying over on that corruption issue. And Tella Bala says the death penalty depends on the crime committed, but if it's terrorism, we can't breed them. We can't breed them. They should face the death penalty. Just going back to that, the categorization of what crimes sort of meet the threshold for the death penalty, and a lot of discussion going on around that, right?
Yeah.
And Nomad's post said, let's have a fair judicial system and we can discuss capital punishment then.
Yes.
Going back right down to the infrastructure.
Two-pronged, I suppose. Working on our judicial system, like we said, to ensure that you are absolutely sure. And I think John Waiganjo, the Member of Parliament for Jororok, raised it, that, how sure are we that the people we put, we convict are actually the ones? Do we have forensic evidence that says right down to a T, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that person X is guilty of crime Y? But the two conversations, if you ask me, can happen in tandem.
At the same time, I believe so. We don't have to wait for the judiciary to be reformed completely for us to be able to continue trying crimes. I mean, we've seen it with respect to the past, 5, 6, 7 years? With respect to what's been happening in the judiciary and the crimes that have been tried there. It doesn't have to be a process that, follows the other.
Okay. So this is currently with the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee in Parliament right now. It's going to make its way to the floor of the House soon. So if you feel very strongly about this, make sure you get in touch with your Member of Parliament if this is something you feel will affect you directly and you feel very passionately about it. But a national debate on this is definitely important in the country, and we're grateful for all your views, as diverse as they are. We're always grateful for that right here on Checkpoint. Thank you so much for joining us on the show tonight. Do have a great week ahead. My name is Yvonne Okwara Matole.
My name is John Allen Amu. Good night, good luck, have a great week.